are, and welcome to another episode of the Friday Night Movie Podcast. We have with us, this is exciting, this is like a premiere day episode of the Friday Night Movie Podcast because we have with us the director and writer of Clock, which premieres on Hulu today, the day that this is coming out, Alexis Jacknow. Alexis, welcome to the family.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to see you all again.
And I didn't get to meet you the first time, so I'm jealous. I feel like I have a lot of room to make up.
Becky and I maybe talked a lot about.
A lot of, they're like,
perhaps.
They did not stop talking about you after they met you.
We will catch up. We will get there.
Okay, so Clock, which is from Hulu's Bite-Sized Halloween shorts originally, which we have covered a lot. So we are big fans of the Bite-Sized Halloween. Folks who are listeners to the show know how much we talked about the filmmakers who made Moshari. They made Foreigners Only, which was on Bite-Sized Halloween. We loved, I think, Bad Rabbit from Rebecca Johnson and Kate Nash. And so the fact, and Appendage, which we covered the feature also. So it's like an esteemed group of filmmakers. And here we are getting to talk to another one in this great tradition, a movie that is so terrifying and disturbing and Jewish, which is
I know.
Jewish one for us to talk. The first is Clock. Okay, Alexis, before we get into spoilers, because I don't think there's much we can do. I mean, we can do a lot without spoilers, but how would you describe the genre of this horror film to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's mostly a psychological thriller with elements of horror. You know, hopefully we have a few good jump scares in there, but mainly you're very welcome. But mainly we're watching a woman on the verge.
Right.
And the things that have pushed her to the verge have everything to do with fertility, motherhood, pressure, generational trauma, all swirling together. And as a parent, as a Jewish dad, I was just blown away by the way you threaded in the conflict, the inner conflict that I think anyone, I'm not going to speak for women because I can't, I'm a guy, but anyone might have when they're thinking about whether or not they want to be a parent in this day and age. It just kind of blew us away. Where does that come from?
Oh, just my personal life,
Very personal.
Just everything that's kept me up at night for the past 10 years. No, I mean, it's an incredibly personal story to me. Deciding whether or not to have children, is the thing that I, have lost sleep over and have, been kind of tormented by, and it's just kind of like, what better place to write horror from? I had a writing teacher once say that a great place to write from is to either write about your greatest fear or your greatest wish. And I think my greatest fear was that I had a broken biological clock, and my greatest wish was that I could fix it. And so Clock just was really, the marriage of those two ideas.
Wow. Well, I think that it translates really, really well. Okay, so Clock. Let's get into like what it's like. Okay, there's a woman. She is married.
Played by
Diana Agron,
who's from Glee, but in many other things. But people might know her mostly from Glee, and she has a very successful and full life. Wow.
But she also has pressure from pretty much everywhere, it seems, whether it's from her family or her husband, friends, to not just have kids, but it's like this other element of it.
She's almost treated like she's broken because she doesn't have that desire to have kids. So it feels even a little bit deeper when people are making comments to her, and questioning her choices. It's not just a judgment of her lifestyle. It's a judgment of her character, of her wiring. And Yeah, right. It's
And-
that in itself is pretty horrifying.
And one of the I find the most poignant moments, just like in the development of her story, when we're getting her story at the beginning, is when one of her friends casually says, "Well, what do you do all day? Because you don't have kids." And I do have kids, so I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, if are you seriously asking that? Because God, what does I can't wait." And then you do the montage of
That montage is
I was drooling.
stunning.
I was drooling. I was like, "Oh, that looks so good." I'm like, if you have not ask this woman that, because then you're gonna feel really bad in a second when she's like, tells you about her meetings, her massages, and I was like, "This is amazing."
Just living her best life, Yeah, totally.
But
Totally.
she can't say that in the scene. It's so great because she just says, like, she didn't say anything.
Right.
None of that is good enough. But from being on the other side, it sounds amazing.
So I have a question about that, which is, so she does have all these fulfilling things, but I don't think the movie, and maybe I'm jumping to conclusions here, but I don't feel like you're saying to the viewer as a filmmaker that it's that simple. Like, I sense a real heavy conflict from the characters, from the filmmakers, but also because there is this amazing Jewish thread that is interjected
Very
into
powerful.
it about pressure to keep the Jewish people going, because she comes from a family of Holocaust survivors. Her dad is played by the incredible Saul Rubinek, who's in
my God,
favorite Jewish movies of all time, The Outside Chance of Maximilian Glick. That is the best bar mitzvah movie ever made. It's a small movie from the 80s.
I haven't seen it. I'll have to check it out.
like you have to find like a VHS copy. I actually bought a VHS copy to get it.
Isn't he also in Hunters?
He's in Hunters.
Yeah, and he's in Hunters, which is like, talk about Jewish action horror.
But I get the sense that even though the main character has this fulfilled life, it's not simply this pressure, but she has her own conflict. Like, she has her own desire to honor that. Could you speak to that about that element?
Sure. Well, I'm Jewish, and part of what I struggle with is that I feel like because I'm Jewish and because of the persecution our people have faced over and over for centuries, I have less of a choice. It's all about choice. And because of my race and my ethnicity and religion, I feel I have less of a choice because what has been done to our people, because there aren't many of us left. And the Jewish line is traced through the women. And so I felt this enormous responsibility. I don't want to call it a burden. I would want to call it a responsibility to continue our race of people, because I love our people, and I want to see us continue and be prolific. And so, when you're thinking about writing a character under pressure, it's like, well, what can you do to turn up the heat on them? What can you do to turn it up so that it's an absolute boil until it overflows? And for me, one of the crucial elements, is, well, let's make her be from this culture or background that is also demanding her to act in a certain way.
Yeah, it's so personal, but to all of us, it's so personal, but also such a unique theme in a film. Like, I feel like this is for everyone to see. And the Holocaust in and of itself is a horror, like, obviously, like, just having that, weight in the background of the film, but it's a universal theme in terms of how everybody, I think, can relate in a lot of ways, but should know about this very specific thing that other, like, women might be going through, or like the history that we all carry behind that. And
Lily, you had to deal with that when Lily decided to have, in the sense that when your second child was born, during the pandemic, Lily had to make a decision as to whether or not she was going to have a bris in the pandemic,
like circumcision. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For the non-Jews that listen to our podcast,
yes, there might be like two.
I feel like even if there are non-Jews that listen to our podcast, they know enough Jews that they know what a bris is.
But I mean, I'll admit, like, and I hope this doesn't make Alexis like me less, but like Mom and I were definitely like reminding you that in the Haggadah they say they circumcised the kids even though they were thrown.
I will say, yes, I don't know if I could really like exactly to the film, and in some ways maybe not at all, but there is. Yeah, I was in a very tough moment in my life and had a newborn, and there was a raging pandemic. This is like OG pandemic. There was pre-vaccines and everything. And I live in a remote place. And my Jewish mom was sitting there going, okay, but like Jews have faced greater obstacles. but like, there's a lockdown. How am I going to get a moil here? Like, I can't deal with this stress. What if the baby gets COVID? And she was like, they did the circumcisions before they put in the rivers in the Haggadah.
What's funny is that you guys all did get COVID, but not from the breast.
Yeah, not from the moil.
After that, we got COVID.
Not from the moil.
Yeah, but not from the moil.
Like a month later.
But
and in fairness, this guy, bris is supposed to go short. It was the longest bris ever.
Very
like
stressful.
we were on Zoom, and my mom just like looked at the camera at one point where Lily couldn't see and was like, "I don't know what's happening. Why is this going so long?" It was
a bit intense. The point is that I did turn to my mom at one point, and I was like, if something should happen to us, because of this like old tradition or something that you're so obsessed with, how bad are you gonna feel? Like I was trying to turn the guilt around on her, and she was like, not gonna work on me. 60-year-old Jewish woman, and I'm Cuban, so watch my guilt come right around back at you. And in the end, I did it at my own way. I didn't do it the 8 days after. I did it like a month after we planned it properly, and I didn't do like the traditional 8 days that you're supposed to do because I couldn't handle all of that, and so it took me some time. In the end, yes, we figured it out how to do it, but it was, I think that in many ways, and all of us, we carry the guilt. I think what was really interesting about the film and the generational trauma that was woven in there is the father's character, Saul Rubinek's character, he's obviously carrying it himself. Like, and he is, and we all have known children of Holocaust survivors. We would be grandchildren, but we know children of Holocaust survivors. And like that opened, like Shai and I were talking about it, like, whoa, that's a whole other film. Like, that's a whole other window into what it's like to grow up in a household like that.
Yeah. And I mean, I really tried to thread more of that throughout the film visually. Like there are things that nobody would ever catch if if they weren't Jewish. Maybe even if they are Jewish, they wouldn't catch it. But, when we were selecting like what car Ella drives, I was like, I want her to drive.
You noticed.
You noticed she was driving.
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. And I said, I want her to drive I want her to drive a German car because my grandparents wouldn't buy anything German. And that was like a real no. And then my mom owned a BMW, and that was like a thing, right? And I wanted to show Ella as, a modern American Jewish woman who was going to, just make her own way, but still feel tied down by these things. We show an exterminator the moment she gets to the clinic, he's spraying the lawn, there's just like all of these.
I was wondering that, but I didn't pick up on that.
The bug imagery.
The bug thing. Yeah.
And
that is, the bug image.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there are all of these little things like, her tie that she wears.
That we noticed.
That breaks. I mean, nobody's going to pick up on this one, but in the photograph of her grandmother is wearing the same necklace. So it's like the second she accidentally like breaks that thing, this symbol, which means life, we know she's in for it. And that's when grandma kind of comes out of the woodwork. Mm-hmm.
I called that it was the grandmother.
Yeah, she called that it was.
I was very excited. I mean, it's a terrible thing to be excited about. Lily and I are watching.
Yeah, I watched part with Becky, and I watched the other part with Shai. I got very lucky to watch a bit with both.
And so I was very we love predicting movies. It's like it's important to us, and I was like, it's got to be the
I
grandma.
I did not predict. I didn't predict anything.
Which is also such an incredible. Becky and I, when we were talking about this back when we were in Austin, and you're from Austin, so this is we were talking about bold choices, and I think that this film, you made so many bold choices, and to have like a Jewish grandmother is such a sacred character.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, they're not perfect. We have our Jewish mothers are complex people.
Yeah.
But to make the haunting ghost the grandmother, and the way you threaded together that particular visual and why that visual is the way it is, I don't want to give it all away.
Right.
Was so cool and so gutsy. But at no point did I feel that Judaism or Jewish culture was the villain. And I feel like there are other films.
I don't know how you made that distinction or walked that line, but you did. And it
to bring up, the speech in the
but just before that, I want to contrast too. So something we talk about is there's a lot of Jewish comedies out there. I'm not going to name any of them, especially because you're here and they're your colleagues and we're just like jokers on a podcast. But we talk a lot about how in comedy things are considered Jewish, but like the Jewishness is the butt of the joke. It's the defect. It's the personality defect. And we've been particularly critical of one show where a character's Jewish qualities are all of his bad qualities. And whenever he shows growth, whereas in this one, the heavy burden of being Jewish is literally haunting this woman. But at no point did I feel like this was the message was leave your past, screw your people, get away from that. How'd you do that?
Well, I don't feel that way, I don't like personally when Judaism is portrayed that way, when we're either the butt of our own joke or the butt of somebody else's joke, or only seen in striped pajamas kind of thing, that's the only thing, or heroic or whatever. And I just really wanted to write like a modern Jewish American woman who is living a very fulfilling, normal, modern life, until of course she's not, but does carry this cultural weight with her. And I, like I said, like I love our people and I wanted to uphold them. And you can be haunted by your history and your ancestry without having that be something villainous, right? Because like we weren't the ones that perpetrated that, Yeah.
Right. And now that
Right.
speech, that's the perfect time to.
Speech came out of like nowhere to me. I just was like, whoa. It was everything that I was maybe thinking or imagining. And then that speech, which you wrote and Dana says, is so poignant.
The bug speech.
Yeah, when she eventually, like, just if people haven't seen it, goes to a clinic to fix her biological clock, and she's explaining her maybe feelings or whatever to the doctor. I want to say Jan now. I have it.
Jan Levinson Gold.
Listening, it's Jan from The Office, and by the way,
Jan from The Office.
Genius casting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, she's so good. She's so good in that role because again, you're wondering all the time, who's the villain? Is she the villain? Is she good? Is she bad? She's just again teetering on that edge the whole time. And Lily and I, as we're watching, we're going, but she's so sincere. We know that what she's doing is
really appreciated, because I don't think she's the villain. Because,
right. She's so sincere in what
treatment, and I maybe also would have bothered me a little bit if like the medical industry was the villain. It would have been maybe a bit too obvious or a bit too, I don't know.
But it's not that.
A lot of weird scientific, like if you look at IVF, which I did, it's like a science mind meld. Like it's not natural. It's not normal. It's just so bizarre. It's like flying to the moon.
Lily's kid defrosted
on a
counter like a hamburger.
Yeah, like he was. My husband and I look at him, we're like, but he was frozen. It doesn't make sense. And so
it's crazy what we can do now.
It's really bizarre. And that's not even like they can do so many amazing things. And I think that like I take issue, or I don't appreciate when people maybe, describe it as something nefarious or, messing with God or nature. And it bothers me because that's, personal. And so I liked that I didn't feel, and maybe some people read it that the medical industry is responsible, but it wasn't clear to me that necessarily the doctor who's treating her is a bad person, is trying to do something. She calls her a lot and asks her if she has side effects. And the patient,
she does. And that was really important to me, is that number one, Dr. Simmons, Melora's character, feels that she is doing something in service of women. She is helping women who have asked for her help voluntarily. And if something is going wrong, she wants to know about it. She tells her to stop. Like, oh my God, if this is your health, if something's going wrong, we need to stop immediately, and I think that she believes that. And also, for me, because of that choice, for me, the true horror of the movie is watching a woman voluntarily choose to go against her better instincts over and over and over and over. Because
I like that.
Nobody's making her do this. Yeah, nobody's making her do this. Nobody's, she doesn't get to the clinic and she's not like locked in or whatever.
It's like The Menu. Have you seen The Menu?
I loved The Menu. I loved that movie. But yeah, it was important for me to show that she has like full service on her cell phone. She can send a text. She can make a call. She can her car is right out front. She can get out of there whenever she wants.
Really,
and she chooses to stay. And that to me is like the true horror of the film.
And when she's there, she meets another patient.
She sure does.
Played by
the wonderful Alexis.
Little Easter egg for people watching. Can you spot Alexis?
How did that come about?
Well, I'm an actor, and I wanted to be in a movie, so
this seemed like the easiest way. I'll just write, direct, do the whole thing, and then I could just put myself in it.
Right.
You're great at it. You're
an audition, right?
Auditioning.
Here.
But
it was really fun to jump in there for a minute. And I have this really great photo of being in the makeup trailer with Diana, and my line producer and my AD followed me in there as I was like, as they were trying to do something with my ragged face. And after like 5 minutes of just having them stand over my shoulder, I was like, you get out. Like, you gotta go. Like, you can't be hovering while this is happening right now. And I got to like close my eyes while they did my hair and makeup. And it was like the only 15 minutes in 8 weeks that I just like went, it was great.
So worth it to put yourself in the movie.
Huh?
So worth it to put yourself.
It's a good hack. A good hack for other directors.
Yeah, 15 minutes in the makeup trailer, totally worth it.
And so was that choice of that character, who is another patient who seems to be more confident in the experience, right? That patient seemed to be very much like on board.
Yeah, and
as opposed to the patient at the beginning of the film, who's
I'm not going to open. That's not ruin that opening
who's
scene.
suffering more.
Yeah.
I think that my character is like resigned to her choice. I think, there's like a sense of this about it, sorry, we're on a podcast, that doesn't translate. There's a sense of
shrugging our shoulders.
Yeah. I'm shrugging my shoulders, a sense of, we're, I'm doing this and I'm giving into it. And even though I might not like it, I've made my choice.
But what's interesting is that she doesn't seem to be having, and the other women that you kind of see around don't seem to be having necessarily the same side effects, we'll call them, as Ella's having. So,
well, I think that they are in their own ways, but I think that that's kind of what she says in the cafeteria at the end of Dr. Simmons is like, oh, nobody's told you, have they? Because first of all, I think women hold a lot in.
Oh, wow.
I think women don't talk about
And especially in the medical field, that's another layer. There's so many layers to this film.
Yeah.
The medical field and how women are ignored, but then also basically made to lie because our pain is not acknowledged, recognized as
right. And so she kind of says, like, we were all so desperate to be normal in quotes, like we were willing to white knuckle it through anything. Like we were willing to put up with these insane side effects and the pain and the psychological torture.
And we are all the time.
I know. Yeah, exactly. And
I was just thinking of shoes alone.
Like shoes alone.
Just shoes alone.
Shoes alone. Yeah. Oh my God. Title of this episode, Shoes Alone.
Poor women. Shoes alone.
Shoes alone.
So the Jewish stuff is like, I love that it's not hidden and it's not something, if you're only Jewish, it's that speech that she gives the doctors makes it very out there. This is what I'm dealing with. But then I love the layers behind, like, women's experience in the medical field and how we're treated in society, and it's really beautifully layered with a lot of important themes, especially today. And the fact that you give her so much choice in the film and yet she's so locked in is really claustrophobic. Yet I said to Shai, she can call her husband, she can call anyone and leave. And Shai goes, she doesn't have reception. I go, yes, she does.
She does.
She's literally calling her husband.
Yeah, she's stuck, like mentally stuck. And it's very claustrophobic.
She's putting herself there. She is. And that's what Simmons says to her. She's like, this is a voluntary program that you signed up for, and you can leave whenever you want. And so that's truly like the worst prison of all, is when, like, you've put yourself there, you've locked yourself in this place. But yeah, I mean, what you said a moment ago of it just feeling really relevant. I mean, when we started making this movie, Roe was still very much in place. And then on the last day of principal photography, that was the day the Supreme Court opinion leaked. And then 2 months later, when we were shooting that cold open back in LA, that was the day Roe was overturned. And so it was literally, So Roe was overturned that day. And then we had to go do an overnight shoot about a woman who literally ripped something out of her body because she doesn't want to choose motherhood. And we all got to set and we were just like, ooh.
It's as if you knew. It's like, it was relevant before the overturn of Roe v. Wade and so much more relevant after.
Oh, it's just been, I mean, it has put a whole different light on the movie that was not originally intended at all. And it's made it far heavier and more serious, but also more relevant. And so I'm glad that we have it as a conversation piece right now. But I mean, there's so much stuff in there that was unintentional. I mean, that second scene starts on Roe. There's fish roe throughout the entire movie. There's just much in there that we're like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that this is here and it's happening. And this is the world we live in now. I mean, it's been insane.
So first of all, choice is a big deal in our house. My wife works at the DC Abortion Fund, and so we're very proud of her. And body autonomy is a huge important thing for all of us. I think something that has come up with the Roe decision is, for a lot of Jewish people, I mean, for most of the Jewish people I know, because a certain amount of choice around, I say a certain amount because there's a difference between, like, us as very, very liberal Jews and more Orthodox ones. But still, the ability to choose whether or not to have a child is built into the framework of our religion's laws, right? This is something that there is space for. And I'm not going to say that every sect of Judaism does a great job with women and their autonomy, but there is a certain amount of choice that's really built into it. And I think I really thought a lot about how powerful it was to have this framed in the Jewish context, because there is the actual human rights part of this, and then there's the religious rights part of this. Like, being able to choose our destiny is built into who we are. and particularly for women and their bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been totally surreal. Like I still haven't wrapped my head around it, that we're living in a different world now, and that every day it just seems to get more and more restrictive. You know, now they're
Since
about
then there's been change.
And we're recording this. This is going to drop on the day the film comes out, but we're recording this on the day the Supreme Court is making its decision about the abortion pill, about a medication.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's still going. It's still going and going. And, you know, we shot it in my hometown of Austin, Texas, and Texas now has some of the strictest and worst abortion laws in the country. Not only is, you know, not only do they have restrictive abortion laws, but you can sue another fellow human being under SB 8 if they've aided in, you know, helping somebody get an abortion, and that can just be like, I drove them to a clinic, or I made a phone call on their behalf. It's absolutely terrifying.
Yet, and I'll tie this back to the film. Yet, even though she's making choices throughout, she is being manipulated by. There's a reveal. She's being manipulated by someone as part of this. You know,
but I really,
that guy doesn't get in trouble,
right? But I also really
he
doesn't
get in trouble, but he gets a pretty bad injury.
Yeah, he gets what's coming to him.
It could have been.
Wait, who are we talking about? Oh,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing that you forgot about that. How could you
forgot about that? That's incredible.
I think that would be steered into your. Did you just have to like delete it from your brain?
No,
it was so.
No, you know why? Because in this movie,
you were like, he deserved it. No,
in this movie, like the character that I most struggled with was the father, and so I was much more focused on the fate of the father and like I don't identify with her husband at all. Like in this film, because he was a phony. Like he just didn't. I didn't identify with him, but the father, because there were threads of the father that I identify with, until it turns out he's a much meaner, nastier, damaged person than he sort of lets on. He's originally sort of this cute, like bagel dad. That's kind of why I was much more focused on the fate of what happens to the dad than the husband. I did forget about that
scene.
I didn't like. I mean, now I remember it, but
and I just also thought it was really interesting the way that you wove in. I would say it's somewhat guilt, because guilt is a big theme in the film, but just other people's perspective of your choices. Like the friends all have their opinion, fine, but then when there's a crucial scene between the main character and her best friend who's about to have a baby, and she is so angry at her, and she says, you know, you won't do something that you could so easily do, but it's hard for me because she has a woman as a partner, and they obviously had to do some kind of IVF to get pregnant, or insemination to get pregnant, and in that because you can do so. I thought that was really interesting, because you can do something, you're supposed to carry the hurt and the pain of everybody else, because it's not easy for them, and on a personal level, you know, that really resonated with me, because I've seen it before in other versions in different shows or movies with women. And Becky was pregnant with her second while I was just starting IVF, and you know, we were fine. It was great. I was so happy for her. But you know, if you know, Becky, let's say, was like, well, I don't want another baby, and I'll just, you know, I'm gonna go have an abortion, which she's absolutely allowed to do, we might have had a different conversation. And I've seen that conversation play out. And this was, you know, a woman who's heterosexual, like upper status in the world, and could easily have a baby, as if that's all it comes to. And I just, you know, it's a whole other conversation. When you have money, you're have a male partner, he can just get you pregnant, and that's it. Then, you know, you shouldn't complain. And that conversation is so heavy and important. And I thought that you know, you was just a really interesting thread through the film.
My you know, I know many women, many couples, many family members that have desperately wanted children and have struggled for years to have them. And, the emotional toll, I understand that takes is great. And also the physical toll on women who go through IVF or, whatever medical procedures, and men who have surgeries to, try to work towards this goal together. And the last thing I wanted was for Ella to come off as, well, she is. I mean, she's a little flippant about it. And that's why her friend has to say, like, hey, the way you talk about this is hurtful to me. It's inconsiderate, and that's fine if you don't want this, but please recognize that I do, and that it's hard for me to see how easy it could be for you when for me it has been so difficult. And I just really wanted that in there because God, the last thing I want is for women to feel like this movie is saying, like, you shouldn't have children, or, what, I mean, that's what you want, great. It's also not a movie saying you should have children. It's a movie trying to show the whole spectrum, which is impossible in 90 minutes, but, a spectrum of womanhood and parenthood and, female desires and autonomy.
Right. And that there's no, I mean, the idea of like being broken and what does that mean? And like,
well, we certainly have your back and are excited about this film. But in the context of the conversation we're having, I have to imagine there are going to be some pretty strong responses to this story, everything from, giving women bodily autonomy, right? But I don't know. It's very thought provoking. It is much more than just a horror film with some scares. It is a very thoughtful, deep film with really powerful themes. So,
yeah, I mean, I really hope that, I don't know what will be directed at me when it comes out, but my hope is that it sparks conversation and debate and questions. And I really hope that it's a conversation and not people just shouting at each other with their fingers in their ears, because we do enough of that.
Well, I think you've given lots of room for conversation in here because you have showed such a spectrum. And it's not just like a pinhole view of this experience, but you have, were thoughtful in that.
And I always think about, if I've seen a movie and I can't stop thinking about it, that's a good sign. And so even though I didn't remember that one scene, I have not stopped thinking about this movie since I saw, and I've seen like 2 other movies since then, and I'm still like absorbing.
Thank you.
So Becky mentioned the scares. There are a few good scares, and I would love to, I want to know from, so I'm going to put 3 scares in front of you from the movie, and I ask which one of these is. It's weird to ask your favorite, but you have to have a favorite. You're a filmmaker. You made this movie, right? Or maybe not a favorite, but like you enjoyed making it, even though it's a very heavy movie, right?
Oh, yeah, I loved making it.
Okay, so there is a scene that I think is the scare of the movie for me, is the spider crawling on the pregnant woman's stomach. Or the perceived spider, and then ensuing attempt to squash the spider. There is the grandmother at the window, and I would say like another big scare. I mean, there's the when the husband gets his comeuppance. Let's just say, which one of those 3 was your favorite to film, and which one was your just favorite to watch? Like, so one to create and then one to experience as a...
Yeah. The kitchen scene between Ella and Aiden was my favorite to film. That was probably my favorite day of filming because we just got the whole day to shoot that one scene in one location. And that was a luxury we certainly did not have for any other, however many pages in the movie. And to get to just hunker down with those 2 incredible actors who showed up and were so game, because that is an intense scene with a roller coaster of emotions. And so they had to do it over and over. You know, we got a lot of coverage, and, you know, God bless Jay. Like, he was so down to just like, you know, trust me and the crew and, you know, what we were doing physically there. And I just loved making that scene. I loved shooting that scene because, you know, wouldn't that be the dream if you got to work at that pace every day? However, I will say that my favorite scare to watch in a theater, because we got to see it premiere in New Orleans a couple weeks ago, was the spider on the belly. We literally had a woman sitting behind me who could not help herself. She started shouting, no ma'am, you put that book down, no ma'am. And like the whole theater was like freaking out during that moment. And that moment made people during both screenings, like the audience just, you know, like clinched. Everyone, there was a lot of vocalizations and, you know, just really a lot of upset. And that was really fun to hear. And, you know, the story of that spider, gosh, we probably don't have that long left, but I'll give you the bullet points, which is that Grace, my actress playing Shauna, said to us, she called me like a few days before we shot the scene, and she was like, so I just want to let you know that I am deathly afraid of spiders. And I was like, oh, well, that's really good to know.
Wait, did you use a real spider?
We sure did.
Oh my God, I thought that was CG'd in. Oh my God. Because in my head I was like, why would, no, even the one that looked hyper real, because in my head I'm like, who would allow something to crawl on them? Obviously, and they make CG so good these days.
That's the thing, is that
so it was like nobody would allow that thing to crawl over their body.
Right. So that was,
oh my God,
that was a very real tarantula. And Grace told me she was deathly afraid of spiders. So we immediately got her a body double, have there. And, you know, we had these huge safety meetings with the animal wrangler about what this spider might do and how we needed to behave around it and blah, blah, blah. And then on the day, Grace walks up to me and she was like, I want to do it. Like, I want to do it. Don't use that body double. And I was like, that's insane. We literally have a woman standing right here ready to sit in. And she was like, no, I'm doing it. And I was like, okay. And so she hopped in there. And when I tell you, I have a 3-minute long video on my phone of what happened before we were able to get that shot. And this spider was not having it. He was crawling all over this prosthetic belly. It is truly, that was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. And Diana, God bless her, sat there like an angel. Just her eyes were closed. She was inches from that thing, and she waited for just 3 minutes.
I have so many questions.
I know.
I was like, we don't have enough time. What happens if you get bit? How are you supposed to act? Did anybody scream? How did they know?
What was the spiders per diem?
Yeah.
I don't know what the spider got paid, but like, I mean, we had like, you know, the representative from the ASPCA there. And it was like, you know, there were rules, like we couldn't have a boom mic over it, because if something passed over its head, it would think it was a predator or something, like a bird or a whatever, like a shadow. So we couldn't mic certain actors in a way in that scene. I mean, there were just like a lot of things that we had to be really aware of. And
but they're venomous, right? Like, what happens if you get bit? Like, what if it bit Diana on the face?
So they can bite, but it's not like it's like getting a little bee sting. However, something we were not informed of in our first safety meeting, this animal wrangler gets to set. We had an hour-long safety meeting about it on Zoom. And then the animal wrangler gets to set with this spider, and she goes, oh, well, you know, Diana can't put her head there because, you know, they throw their bristles. And I was like, I'm sorry, what?
They shoot like
they're these like, these hairy little creatures, and they can throw their bristles. It was instant. I said, wait a minute. I was like, we went over the scene. We know that her head is on the belly next to the spider. What do you mean they throw bristles, and why are we hearing about this just now? So it was like a really wild time on set dealing with this tarantula. That,
worry about the spider, and I respect spiders, but your main actress is also right there, and that's a lot of concern. Wow.
I'd also want you to know that Becky invites animal wranglers to her kids' birthday parties with all of their like lizards and giant frogs.
Not tarantulas. I've had many snakes and things like that, but I draw the line at a tarantula.
I actually have quite a soft spot for tarantulas because I'm from Texas, and we have the biggest tarantulas, and they're actually sweet. They're very sweet creatures, and they don't bother you if you don't bother them. I actually really love tarantulas, but that doesn't mean I want to stick my face near one. Right. And Diana, it should be said, is an absolutely fearless actress and human being, and there was nothing that she would not do for this film. Even the things that I said, please don't do that, she was like, oh no, I'm doing that.
Well, it comes across like the tension in the scene. It looks real. I didn't understand how you got a spider, but I thought it looked like a real spider. So it all looks real. That incredible tension. That was the one where we were very vocal.
Yes.
No, don't do that. I can't believe you're gonna do it. Freaking out.
We have had like an extremely intelligent conversation. This is very deep.
Yes.
And I feel like tarantulas have gotten us right into the mood where I can ask a dumb question.
Let's do it.
Okay. So this has very little to do with your film, which is fantastic, and people should watch it. It's on Hulu. April 28th. Like, strap in. It's really, really, really intense, and it's going to give you a lot to think about. So we play a game on the show. We call it Buy, Rent, or Meh. Okay. So I'm going to give you three things. Okay. And you have to force rank them. Buy, like as if you're in a video store, you're going to buy the video. Rent or meh. Doesn't really mean last place, because it doesn't have to be last place. It can just be, it can be whatever you want the meh to mean.
Okay, great.
Buy and rent. Buy is above rent. That's what's important. Okay.
Great.
So your film is called Clock. And there's a lot of famous timepieces in movies. And I wanted to put three different timepieces. And Becky and Lily, if you want to chime in, at a certain point, like if you don't make choices, go for it. And I wanted you to just pick which ones, like pick the order of these three that I'm going to put in front of you.
Great.
And hopefully I think you'll know them. Okay. So number one, the clock tower in Back to the Future. Okay. Number two, the watch in Pulp Fiction. You remember the watch?
What do you mean the watch?
With Christopher Walken. I hid this watch, and
Oh yeah. Okay.
Do you all have another one? If not, okay.
An important
the
clock.
Last one I have is this building exists, so it's in a lot of different movies, but I am especially attached to its reference in the movie European Vacation, because when they get stuck in the circle and they keep going around and going, look kids, there's Big Ben in the Parliament building. So
yeah,
look kids, there's Big Ben in the Parliament. So Big Ben, the clock tower from Back to the Future, the watch from Pulp Fiction, buy, rent, or meh.
Okay, I'm definitely buying the clock tower from Back to the Future. I'm gonna rent Big Ben, and I'm gonna meh Pulp Fiction watched.
Okay.
I fully support that. I don't even feel like she needs to rationalize it. It makes sense in my head. She can defend, but I agree.
Fair enough. Another question I would love to know when we're in this section of the show is, do you have a question you like to ask people so you can sort of read whether or not you're going to be friends with their movie taste? So like I always ask people what their favorite music moment in a movie is. But do you have like a thing where, like, let's say you're like hiring someone to work on your film and you like ask them, do you have like a movie question or a pop culture question you ask?
I don't really, but I know that I appreciate people who love the classics. I was really raised on the classics. classics, and if we have, kind of that common denominator, I know that we'll get along just great.
Like you're saying Singing in the Rain, or you're saying
Yeah,
or you're like Pretty Woman? Like, what are we talking about here?
Both are technically classics.
Yeah, I'm talking like Singing in the Rain. I'm talking like, All About Eve, Marty, Best Years of Our Lives, like the greats, back in the day. I was raised on that stuff. And I really have an appreciation for the storytelling and filmmaking, and anybody else who does as well. Like, I know that we're just going to be able to have a really easy conversation.
Cool. All right. And what's like a movie that anyone who has met you or seen Clock, I guess, would be surprised that you really love? I don't think I can surprise anyone. I don't think I can surprise anyone at this point.
A guilty pleasure.
Yeah,
be a guilty pleasure if you want to.
Like
that direction.
I don't think I
just
can.
Be something
I don't think I can surprise anyone at this point because everyone knows I love Cats, the movie.
Yeah.
The movie.
You always say, I know it has problems, but
I know it's totally messed up, but I love it.
Yeah.
Well, it's no surprise if you know me, but because like you said, I can be a rather light and sunny person at the beginning of this conversation. But if all you know of me is the movie that I made, Clock, maybe you'd be surprised to know that like my favorite movie of the last however many years is Eurovision on Netflix. Like
I love that movie.
Oh my God.
That's
that movie over and over.
Me too. I could quote every line of it. It is a perfect movie. It's my favorite. It brings me so much joy.
Husavik should have won the Best Song Oscar.
Agreed. And they did such a beautiful job with it that night. I love Husavik.
Oh, they landed that in the movie so well.
Oh my God. I get chilled every time.
Just listening to it when I got out of the shower the other day.
So good.
That's
I feel like that's isn't that one of our most downloaded episodes?
We have a couple of most downloaded episodes. One of them is the review episode we did of RRR. It like took off in India, absurd numbers. And then the other one was we have an episode called Play Ya Ya Ding Dong, and it's all our review of Eurovision. And it's the right moment.
It's a perfect movie. I can't get enough of it. Whenever I'm feeling down, that's the movie I watch.
So you made Clock, terrifying, slow burn psychological horror. Mm-hmm. What's your next mountain you're going to conquer? What's coming next? Or what type of movie do you want to make next?
Well, I've got a couple irons in the fire. We'll see what may or may not happen with an upcoming writer's strike. But I have a project with 21 Laps that is also a horror film called The Blindings, which I'm really excited about. It's kind of like a female revenge, really fun thriller. And then I have a drama called The Villager, which I have an incredible cast attached to. And it's just about finding the right people to make it with at this point. It's about heavy subject material as well. But it's something I'm very, very passionate about telling. It's the story of the mother of a school shooter who accidentally becomes pregnant again late in life and decides to start over in the angry town that holds her responsible. So it's very much in contrast to Clock. It's about a woman who decides to have a child and, the healing that creates within a very broken community. So that's a project I'm really passionate about. And then there are other things out there that are spinning plates for me that are giant, like 4-quadrant family comedies. So I'm running the gamut right now. Like, we'll see what hits next.
Oh, that's amazing.
We can't wait to see it.
Alexis, where can people follow you?
Yes, I am on Instagram. I quit Twitter when Mr. Musk took over. So I'm on Instagram. You can find me at AStageJ.
That's what that says. I was trying to make it out. Okay.
Yeah, my initials are ASJ, and I'm a stage actor. I don't know. It's kind of a dumb handle. I should really probably change it, but yeah, A Stage J. So yeah, come find me on Instagram.
Oh, sorry. Do you have any recommendations of anything anyone should be watching?
Ooh, I just watched Beef, which I loved.
All right.
We started that.
We started that, yeah.
We
Loved it. And
we
then
started Jury Duty, which
Awesome.
Lily and I were dying.
Oh,
We were.
I haven't heard of it.
It's
What is it on?
It's like Office style about a
Okay.
jury. It's on Amazon on their free channel.
Okay.
But the catch is there's one person in the entire cast who does not know that it is
A show.
a show.
Okay, great. That sounds fantastic.
So good.
And the only
Okay.
the only very famous person in it is James Marsden playing himself, and he is hilarious.
I'd watch anything with him.
And you're gonna love this.
What a delight of a man. Yeah, Beef. And then like, if you haven't been there already, just I think like my two favorite shows of all time, Chernobyl and Watchmen on HBO. Go watch those.
Those are we did watch.
We
didn't.
Watchmen.
Becky, did you have to do Chernobyl because your husband's Russian?
No, he loved it, and that's one of those shows I cannot watch, but he has described it to me in detail. So I, the next best thing. So I know all the horrors.
It is a horror
to me.
In fact, somebody asked me in an interview the other day, what's your favorite horror film? And I said, Chernobyl. Like, it's not a film, it's a TV show, but like, and it's certainly not meant to be a horror, but it is.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Well, and of course we recommend Clock on Hulu, April 28th. Thank you to the amazing Alexis Jacknow for being here. And we hope we can do more of this again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Friday Night Movie, the sibling rivalry and pop culture podcast. Join the Friday Night Movie family by following @FryNightMovie on all of the socials and visiting our website, FryNightMovie.com. Our theme song is by What Does It Eat? And make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.